Alright guys, we're back for another set of Cornell notes this week. I'm going to apologize in advance if I start coughing halfway through this, since I have not been able to stop coughing today. But we'll try to get through it. Anyways, we're going to be talking about cellular respiration. And cellular respiration is really important because this is how cells in both plants and animals use energy. Or it's how they get energy into a form that they can use. And it actually goes hand in hand with photosynthesis. Together cellular respiration and photosynthesis, together they make a cycle that is called the carbon cycle. And we'll talk about that next week, actually. So our title is Cellular Respiration. Our essential question is, what is respiration and why is it important? So at the top of your paper, you should have the title and the essential question. Below that, you should divide your paper into the two columns. As usual, Cornell note format. The smaller column is there for your key words, key points, main ideas, questions, things like that. And your bigger column is there for your notes. And of course, at the very end, yes, you have to do a summary. So let's get started. What is cellular respiration? Basically, cellular respiration is where cells take glucose, which is a type of sugar, and they use oxygen to break it down into molecules that can actually be used for energy. And you might, in some of the diagrams, see ATP, and that means energy. It's a particular type of molecule that is used for the energy that the cells use. Alright, so what happens during cellular respiration? Just like photosynthesis, it occurs in two stages. So at the first part of cellular respiration, this occurs in the cytoplasm of the cell. So inside a cell, imagine a cell is like a plastic bag. All right, and in that plastic bag, we've got water in it. And in that water is, say, little beads or something like that. All right, the beads represent the organelles, which are the parts of the cell. They're like the organs in our body. Like we have a stomach and a heart and lungs and things like that. The cells have their own version of that, like the mitochondria, the nucleus, things like that. But basically, the cytoplasm is the liquid that fills up the rest of the cell where the organelles are not. So in that plastic bag example, the cytoplasm would be the water that's in the bag. All right, so that's where this first stage of cellular respiration happens. So we've got glucose. Now glucose, you remember, is made during photosynthesis. All right, so that's where we get the glucose from. That's where the cell gets it from. At least in a plant. In an animal cell, it's going to come from the food that the animal eats. So in a plant, the glucose comes from photosynthesis because they make their own food. And in an animal, it's going to come from the food they eat. So anyways, this glucose, the molecules are broken down into smaller molecules. And that releases a little bit of energy. So we get a little bit of energy there. Most of the energy, though, comes from stage 2. Now, in this stage, all of these chemical reactions take place in what's called the mitochondria. And the mitochondria, you might remember from, 6th grade, you might remember that the mitochondria is responsible for energy. It's the powerhouse of the cell. So that's where stage 2 of cellular respiration occurs. So those small molecules from stage 1 get broken down even further. The cell needs to use oxygen for this, and oxygen, comes in from the air, from, the animal breathing, and that oxygen is in the air because of photosynthesis. Right? Photosynthesis releases air. The plant doesn't need it, oxygen. The plant doesn't need that extra oxygen, so it just gets rid of it. It just throws it out there. And animals use it to breathe. So stage 2 is where oxygen comes in. The chemical reaction requires it. And once those small molecules from stage 1 are broken down, a whole lot of energy gets released. And that's what animal cells use to function. Excuse me. All right. So the chemical formula. Basically, glucose and oxygen get broken down into carbon dioxide and water, and energy is released. So, glucose and oxygen, those are our reactants. Those are the things we start with. And through a whole series of chemical reactions, those things get broken down into carbon dioxide and water, and that breaking down of molecules releases energy. So that's where that energy comes from. All right. So cellular respiration and photosynthesis are connected to each other. And basically, the way they're connected is the stuff that is released in one of those processes is used by the other. So for example, cellular respiration releases carbon dioxide and energy. And it also releases water, if you saw on the last slide. So the cellular respiration releases that stuff using the oxygen that was released by photosynthesis. Now, photosynthesis uses carbon dioxide, it uses water, so it uses two waste products from cellular respiration. And in turn, it releases oxygen. Oxygen goes into the atmosphere, and it gets used again in cellular respiration. So it makes this whole big cycle, like you see in the picture. The picture probably explains it a little bit better than I am at the moment. So basically, you've got the plant doing photosynthesis up at the top of that picture. You've got the sunlight going to the plant. Photosynthesis is happening in the chloroplast within the cell. And from photosynthesis, you've got glucose and oxygen, right? And that goes into cellular respiration. So glucose and oxygen get used in cellular respiration. You can see down at the bottom, you've got the ATP in that star. That means energy. So energy is released from that. But going back into the cycle, cellular respiration also releases carbon dioxide and water, which again goes to the plant, and the plant uses that for photosynthesis. So it makes a circle. And we'll talk a little bit more about cycles next week. And this is another example using the chemical formulas. So you can see cellular respiration uses glucose, oxygen, and results in carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Photosynthesis uses carbon dioxide, uses water, and with light, it makes glucose and oxygen. So again, the results, the products from each of these reactions are used by the other. So the products from cellular respiration are then used in photosynthesis. Products from photosynthesis are then used in cellular respiration. And I'm sorry if that's a little bit confusing. But yeah. Anyways, that's it for your notes. Hopefully they were not too long or difficult to write. But you do have one last little bit of work to do, and that is your summary. Summary should be 3 to 5 sentences long. So basically summing up your notes, answering the essential question from the beginning. And please do not forget to hang on to these notes. Hang on to them. You will be allowed to use them on the test, so please hang on to them. Do not give them to me. And that's it.